Hey, welcome back. It is a fantastic Friday on Liquid Lunch, and you're watching Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV, as you should be, every single day from noon to 2 Eastern. And if you miss anything during the week, don't forget, tomorrow, on Saturday, you tune in at 5 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully you tuned in all day to Newsmax, but at 5 p.m. Eastern, you crack open a cold one, you sit back, and you can see the best shots of Liquid Lunch, which are the best interviews we did this week that you may have missed. So kind of try to check that out. And don't forget, coming up right after this, National Report follows with everything you need to know about the impeachment and what's happening around the country and the world with Bob Sellers and Allison Maloney. And just recently, 7 p.m. every night on Newsmax TV, Greg Kelly reports. Don't forget about that one. Greg is a tremendous new addition. And tremendous addition to our show here for the first time is Cameron Chell. He's the CEO of Dragonfly Innovations. And Cameron, thanks for giving us a few minutes today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We've had guys on talking about TikTok before. And we try to cover data and privacy and how people don't even realize how much they're being invaded by the sharing of their data and reselling of their data. This one fellow who comes on often, he says that TikTok is a very dangerous app because it uses facial recognition, and China has now been scolded a couple times for taking information off the servers here in the US and bringing it back to China. According to what your thoughts are, drones may be posing a very similar problem.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up TikTok because TikTok is actually, the US military has an advisory out now for their personnel not to be using that app, which is interesting because it does collect so much data. And there is policy, national policy within China that gives them access to any apps of any national companies. So the similarities with drones, however, are abundant. And other than an iPhone or an Android phone, the thing that collects data more than anything else is a drone. And what there has been suspicion and some concrete evidence of is that the drones that are made by foreign governments that are in operation here, which constitute about 80% of the small UAS market, are collecting that data. And sometimes it seems like benign data. It might be GPS data. It might be wind and speed data. But when you multiply that across, by the millions of drones out there that might be doing survey work on an infrastructure project or a government project, not even necessarily military, it provides critical data back to foreign governments, which the U.S. government is now saying is going to be off limits.
So they've outlawed TikTok for all military people and people who have military phones. Is there any danger of drones being outlawed?
Well, in fact, it's already happened. Use? Yeah, well, not maybe for personal use, but the U.S. Army, the Department of Defense, the Department of Interior, and the government in general has now banned the use of Chinese-manufactured drones for government projects, and particularly in the military. But even if you're a service contractor and you're flying a Chinese drone and you're on government lands, it's off limits now. Those drones are not allowed to be used. And in fact, the Department of Interior has grounded their entire fleet. Wow. And so what's happened is there's this $500 to $600 million service and hardware opportunity for North American manufacturers now to fill that void.
Two quick items that I just want to update viewers on based on stories that we did a little bit earlier. One, in terms of this corona case in Queens that was confirmed and is being reported by the New York Daily News, New York City health officials are disputing that. They're claiming that that's an inaccurate report, and the Department of Health has put out a statement saying that there are still 0 confirmed cases of corona in New York City. We also covered the fact that Nicole Malliotakis' mother, is watching this show. Want to wish her a happy birthday tomorrow. But I do want to ask you there, Cameron, about the issue of drones as a business. I'm watching speaking of corona, I'm watching footage of this one province in China, and you could see all of the streets are deserted, and that is video footage being delivered by drone. We all know about how drones have been used to kill all of our least favorite terrorists in the Middle East and elsewhere. How big of a consumer market is there for drones? How many people are getting drones just for recreation?
Yeah, so the consumer market for drones is significant, but it's the real opportunity, quite frankly, is in the small commercial market and the small military market. That's where the real use case is. That's where the real ROI is returned, and that's where the big opportunity lies. The consumer drone market is already, pretty much saturated. And So it's an interesting market, but it's actually not that big of a market in terms of enterprise value. So the place to focus really is in the commercial and the small military market.
So this isn't the drone you buy for your kid at home. There's not really a lot of danger in these like $100 drones or something. You're talking about the bigger, more commercial styles and military contractor styles.
What's interesting about that is that the Chinese drones that we're speaking about are very well manufactured. They're incredibly engineered products, and they have a price point that gets into that $1,000 range. Those, in many cases, are plenty good enough to do a lot of the commercial work out there, and those are, in fact, the drones that are being banned. So that personal drone that you're using at home, it's collecting data, no question about it.
You said something earlier that I think a lot is lost on a lot of people. When you look at a product and it says made in China, it's not just made in China. China owns every business in China. So the government of China is actually making these things, right? It's not like some vendor who happens to be in China. They own all the private business there, right? So China, the government is actually taking all this information and doing what they wish with it.
They have absolute legal right to all the data on all of those units, those devices in the cloud, any of the data streams. They have legal right within China of that, and that is the real concern. So for a company like Dragonfly, we have literally a $500 million opportunity because there is a very, very small handful of systems developers in North America that can produce this type of equipment. We happen to be one of them, and so so we've got a pretty exciting few years in front of us.
Fantastic! I want to thank you very much, Cameron Chell. Thank you so much, and thank you for being with us through hour two. But don't go anywhere. We got a whopper of a show. Michael Pack is coming up next. Jack Rosenthal, Kelly Masters is going to be here, and then we'll wrap it all up for this week with the WTF, the segment you're all waiting for when Frank corrects all the mistakes I made in today's show. We're going to take a quick break, and it will be no mistake at all for you to be right there when we come back. More Liquid Lunch after this.